So what is object-oriented programming? Well, object-oriented programming is one of the many programming paradigms or styles of programming. We have many paradigms like procedural, functional, object-oriented, event-driven, aspect-oriented, and so on. These programming paradigms are styles or ways of writing code. They're not programming languages. Different programming languages support different programming paradigms. For example, JavaScript and TypeScript both support some object-oriented and functional programming techniques. In object-oriented programming, objects are the building blocks of our application. So a real application consists of hundreds or even thousands of objects working together to solve problems. An object is a unit that contains some data, also called state, and operations, also called behavior. For example, we can represent a person as an object. In this object, we can store some data like the person's name, email, and so on. These are the properties of a person object. They are like variables that only exist inside a person object. Now, in this person object, we can also have some operations or some behavior like talk and dance. These are essentially functions inside a person object. In object-oriented programming, we refer to these functions as methods. So a method is a function inside an object. Similarly, in a real application, we can have an object representing a login form, as well as objects for authenticating users, sending emails, and so on. So each object is responsible for a single task, kind of like how people work together in the real world. For example, in a restaurant, we have different people, each responsible for a single task. We have a hostess, a chef, a server, and many other roles, right? So that's the idea of object-oriented programming. Now, object-oriented programming is often compared with functional programming, which is a completely different style of programming. So in functional programming, functions are the building blocks of our applications, and for that reason, our code would end up looking different. Now, some people, like our famous old John Smith, hate object-oriented programming and are obsessed with functional programming. So they try to solve every single problem using functional programming. Don't be one of them. Remember, every programming paradigm or every tool in general has some strengths and some weaknesses. So there is no such a thing as the best tool, the best language, or the best programming paradigm in the world. So please, for God's sake, stay away from these arguments about functional versus object-oriented programming. And more importantly, don't fall in love with just one tool and try to solve every single problem using that tool. So in this section, we'll be exploring the fundamental object-oriented programming techniques, but I gotta tell you, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is way more to object-oriented programming than we can cover in this course. If you really want to understand object-oriented programming, I have a 3-part course called Design Patterns that teaches you how to solve real coding problems using object-oriented programming techniques. In this course, I've used Java, but you can still follow along because the syntax or the grammar of TypeScript is almost identical to Java. So you don't need to learn Java just to take that course. All right, that's it for now. Next, we're going to talk about creating classes in TypeScript.